Stronger men are not controlling you. You are being controlled by weaker people who learned one thing you never knew. They knew how to use your good intentions as a leash. You call it being decent, being respectful, being helpful, and being a bigger person. You call it values. You call it character. You call it trying to do the right thing. They call it predictable. And when you are predictable, you are manageable. You know the moment I mean. At work, your manager drops a quick favor on you 5 minutes before you leave. You already did your part. You already stayed late twice this week. You still say, sure, no problem. You smile like you are above it. You tell yourself you are building trust. You think the people watching will respect you. What actually happened is simple. You taught them that your time is not protected. You taught them that your boundaries are negotiable. You handed them authority without asking them to earn it. Or in relationships, she gets distant. Short replies, cold tone. You feel the shift. You start explaining, you start asking, you start trying to fix the air between you. You send a long text. You offer clarity. You offer reassurance. You offer effort. And she watches you do it. Calm, silent, evaluating. What actually happened is simple. You stepped into her court. You accepted her frame. You turned yourself into an applicant begging to be approved. Or with friends and family, someone disrespects you with a joke, not a playful one, a little sharp, a little public, enough to test you. You laugh. You act like it did not land. Later, you tell yourself you are mature. You tell yourself you do not need validation. You tell yourself you do not want conflict. What actually happened is simple. You just confirm that people can poke you and you will swallow it to keep the peace. You just proved you will trade dignity for acceptance. This is the deeper cause. You were trained to be helpful, obedient, and agreeable. You were taught to be safe. You were instructed to make other people comfortable. You were trained to believe that good intentions protect you. They do not protect you, they expose you. Machiavelli understood this before you were born, not as a theory. As a fact, he saw what happens when a man relies on virtue to survive in an unvirtuous world. He saw how the language of morality becomes a weapon in the hands of those who want control, but not accountability. He saw how being good becomes a trap when other people are willing to look good while doing what serves them. You are going to hear truths that will irritate the version of you that still wants to be liked. That version will try to negotiate with what I am saying. He will look for exceptions. He will look for a softer interpretation. He will look for a way to retain his old identity while still gaining power. That version of you is the one they control. So here is the filter. Most people will leave. They will call this toxic. They will call it paranoid. They will call it cynical. That is fine. The herd needs a story. The herd needs comfort. The herd needs someone else to be responsible for reality. If you stay, you separate, not because you become cruel, because you become clear. Put your phone face down and listen. I'm going to give you power shifts, not tips, not advice. Power shifts, psychological reversals that change how you are perceived and how you are treated. Each one will feel colder than your training. Each one will feel wrong to the obedient part of you. That is why it works. That is why it separates men who are managed from men who are respected. If this hit you right, I am the strategist once in the comments to mark the day your mindset changed. Now listen closely. Your good intentions are not a shield, they are a signal. They tell people you will prioritize harmony over leverage. They tell people you will choose approval over authority. They tell people you will explain yourself rather than enforce a boundary. They tell people you will keep talking when silence would have held power. And people do not need to hate you to use you. They need to benefit from you. You think manipulation is loud. It is not. It is quiet. It is a raised eyebrow. It is a delayed reply. It is a small sigh. It is a disappointing tone. It is a social cue that says you are failing the test. Then you rush to pass the test. You rush to prove you are good. You rush to repair. You rush to earn back the smile. That is the leash. You need to be seen as good. At work, the easiest man to control is the man who needs to be seen as reliable. Because reliability becomes his identity. Once it is, you can threaten it. You can imply that he is not a team player. You can imply he is selfish. You can indicate he is not committed. You can place him under the invisible spotlight of evaluation. He will overperform to defend his self-image. He will do extra tasks without extra authority. He will accept vague responsibilities with sharp consequences. He will take blame for failures he did not cause because he thinks it shows maturity. He will say yes to protect his reputation, and you call that professionalism. Machiavelli would call it exposure, because when your identity is dependent on other people's approval, other people can steer you by controlling their authorization. They can raise it, they can lower it, they can give it, they can withhold it, and you will move. This is the first reversal you need to swallow. The more you try to prove your good intentions, the more you invite suspicion and control. The man who keeps proving he is loyal is the man who is treated like he might not be. The man who keeps proving he is kind is the one tested for weakness. In real life, you see it in relationships. A woman says, "I just want honesty." You hear that, and you think it is a request. You think it is a safe space. You think it is a promise that truth will be respected. Then you tell the truth and she punishes you for it, not always loudly, sometimes with distance, sometimes with a shift in attraction, sometimes with passive aggression, sometimes it's with a new standard you have to meet. What happened is not complicated. You believed the words, you ignored the power, you accepted her frame. Her frame was, "I decide what honesty means, and I decide what you pay for it." You walked into the court and volunteered to be judged. The decisive move is not lying. The strong move is to refuse to confess, refuse to over-explain, and refuse to hand over details as tribute. The decisive move is to keep your inner world protected until trust is earned, not requested, earned. Good intentions make you easy to interrogate because you think being open is being moral. But openness without leverage is submission. Machiavelli's brutality is simple here. People do not reward virtue consistently. They reward power consistently. They respect what can cost them. They respect what can walk away. They respect what does not need them. You have been trained to earn, not to choose. That is why you get controlled. Here is a situation. A co-worker makes a mistake that creates chaos. The boss is angry. The room is tense. You step forward and say, "I can fix it." You do not want the team to suffer. You do not want the boss to be stressed. You do not wish to conflict, so you absorb the problem. You work late. You save the day. Then the next time something breaks, they look at you again, not because you are respected, because you are available. You are the sponge. You are the shock absorber. You are the man who will sacrifice himself for the system. And when you eventually say no, they act shocked. They act disappointed. They act as if you changed. They act like you are selfish now. That reaction is not confusion, it is enforcement. You train them. You train them with your good intentions. You train them that you can be guilted. You trained them that their discomfort is your responsibility. You taught them to believe that your role is to stabilize their chaos. Machiavelli would not praise you for being noble. He would tell you that you made yourself invaluable without making yourself necessary in the right way. There is a difference. Useful means you do work. Essential means you do work. Essential means you hold leverage. Useful men get tasks. Necessary men get terms. So the reversal is this. Stop rescuing systems that do not protect you. Stop being the emergency service for people who will never repay you with power. If you always fix the mess, you become part of the furniture. You become a tool. Tools do not get consulted. Tools get used. What feels good is weak. Being the hero feels good. Being the fixer feels good. Being a stable man feels good. What is effective feels cold, letting people face consequences, letting silence hang, and letting discomfort exist. Do not rush to solve what you did not break. That feels cold. That is why it works, because it breaks the assumption that you are controllable. Now watch the frame warfare. Someone confronts you with a loaded question. Why are you being so distant lately? Do you even care? Are you mad at me? What is your problem? These are not questions. These are cages with a label. If you answer directly, you accept their frame of reference. You entered the court. You allowed them to define the issue and put you on the defensive. You handed them authority. The common behavior is what you explain. You justify. You soothe. You try to prove your intentions. You try to be understood. And the moment you try to be understood by someone who is trying to control you, you lose. Because understanding is not the goal. Compliance is the goal. The effective move is to reject the frame, calmly, without anger, without drama. You do not defend yourself from an accusation that was never made in good faith. You do not argue with an emotional trap. You do not chase clarity with someone who benefits from confusion. You say less. You hold eye contact. You let the silence do the work. Silence is not empty. Silence is pressure. When you explain, you leak power. When you react, you leak power. When you seek approval, you leak power. You start negotiating your own authority. Machiavelli's lens is ruthless here. The person who controls the interpretation controls the situation. If you let them define your intent, they define your identity. If you let them define what is good, they define what you owe. If you let them define what is fair, they define what you must surrender to avoid being labeled. And labels are weapons. Insecure, selfish, immature, cold, arrogant. These words are not always observations. They are pressure tools. They are attempts to move you off your center. If you flinch, they learn they can steer you. Now take this into your social life. A friend asks for a favor. You say yes. Then they ask again. You say yes. Then they ask with less respect. You still say yes because you do not want to be seen as the guy who changed. The truth is, you have already changed. You changed the moment you realized the pattern. You just refuse to accept it. People test boundaries the way a thief tests doors. Quietly. Not because they are evil, because they are curious, because they want an advantage, because life rewards advantage. If your door is unlocked, they walk in. If your door is locked, they knock. If you open it every time, they stop hitting. Good intentions keep your door open. The reversal is to make access expensive, not with insults, with standards, with time, with distance, with scarcity, with controlled availability. Scarcity creates value, distance creates authority, silence creates fear. You were trained to believe availability creates love. It does not. Availability creates familiarity. Familiarity creates entitlement. Entitlement creates disrespect. In relationships, you see it when you become too accessible. You reply instantly. You always pick up. You always adjust your schedule. You always explain your whereabouts as if you are being audited. Then she stops wondering about you. Then she stops fearing loss. Then she starts treating you like a given, not like a prize, not like a man with his own frame, like a resource. That is not romance. That is management. Machiavelli understood that being loved is unstable if love is not tied to consequence. Love without respect becomes hunger. Love without fear becomes casual. Fear without hatred is not cruelty. It is awareness that you are not safe to play with. You do not need to threaten. You need to be willing to remove access. That is the consequence. Another real-life scene. Someone disrespects you in a group. They make you the punchline. You smile. You stay calm. You tell yourself it is not worth it. You do not want to look insecure. You do not like drama. But your silence is not power if it is fear. It is not power if it is avoidance. It is not power if you are swallowing it. People can feel the difference. They can smell it. If your silence is controlled, it changes the room. If your silence is submission, it invites more. So the reversal is to use silence as a weapon, not a shelter. You do not rush to respond. You do not laugh to ease tension. You pause. You look at the person. You let their words sit in the air. You make them own it. Then you decide what happens next. Maybe you cut them off. Make a simple statement that resets the frame. You could change the subject and exclude them. Maybe you leave. The key is that you decide. Not the room. Not their joke. You don't need to be liked. You are trained to be agreeable. Agreeable men get tested. Tested men get managed. Now look at the moral inversion. You think calling people out is rude. You think enforcing boundaries is harsh. You think being direct will make you look insecure. That is the obedient training in speaking. That is the part of you that is addicted to approval. The reality is the opposite. Weak men hide behind politeness. Strong men use politeness as a tool, not a cage. Strong men can be calm and still be final. Calm does not mean flexible. Calm means controlled. Machiavelli would respect the man who can remain composed while denying access. That is power. Power is not loud. Power is the ability to say no without explaining, because the explanation is another leaf. The explanation invites negotiation. Negotiation invites bargaining. Bargaining puts you on equal footing with people who have not earned equality with you. When you say no because you are asking for permission, on the other hand, you are making your boundary dependent on their acceptance of your reasons. You are giving them a chance to counter your logic. A boundary is not logic. A boundary is authority. This is why good intentions make you controllable. Good intentions push you to justify yourself so you can still be seen as good. You want to say no and still be liked. You want to enforce and still be approved. That is not power. That is begging in a nicer suit. Now another shift. You were taught that fairness is the goal. If you are fair, people will be fair back. That if you give, you will receive. That if you are honest, you will be honored. That if you are patient, patience will be rewarded. That belief is a child's contract with the world. In adult reality, people do not treat you based on your intentions. They treat you based on what you tolerate and what you can enforce. They treat you based on your position in the social hierarchy. They treat you based on your access and your scarcity. They treat you based on consequences. So when you keep being fair with unfair people, you're not being noble. You are being naive. You are donating power. Machiavelli's authority here is brutal and clean. The world is not a moral classroom. It is a field of competing interests. People claim moral language when it benefits them. They abandon it when it costs them. They praise kindness when it is directed at them. They call you selfish when you protect yourself. That label is part of the control system. Here is a workplace example. A co-worker wants credit for your work. They collaborate by showing up late and speaking first. You let it slide because you do not want to seem petty. You think your work will speak for itself. It will not. Not in the way you hope. Your work becomes their proof. Your silence becomes their permission. Your good intentions become their ladder. The reversal is to claim what is yours without apology, not with anger, with clarity. You correct the record in real time. You speak when it matters. You do not over-talk. You do not ask. You state. Because if you do not protect your value, no one will. And if you do not protect your value, you become cheap. Cheap men get bought with compliments and small favors. Now watch the frame again. When you assert credit, people may try to shame you. Relax. It's not a big deal. Why are you so defensive? That is not feedback. That is an attempt to reframe your self-protection as insecurity. If you accept that frame, you back down. You laugh. You retreat. You be the bigger person again, and they win again. You have to see this pattern like a predator sees movement. Shame is a leash. Guilt is a leash. Approval is a leash. Confusion is a leash. Social pressure is a leash. A man with good intentions has a weak spot. He wants to be seen as good, so you can control him by threatening his image. The man with leverage does not protect his image, he protects his position. That is another reversal. Stop trying to be understood. Start being respected. Being understood is a comfort prize. Being respected changes your outcomes. Respect is not granted to the nicest man. Respect is granted to the man who holds his ground when others push. Respect is granted to the man who can disappoint others without collapsing. Respect is granted to the man who can say no and remain calm. Respect is granted to the man who does not chase. Chasing is surrender. Now let us go deeper into relationships, because that is where good intentions become the most embarrassing. You think love is proven through effort, through reassurance, through consistent giving, through transparency, through explaining. So when tension appears, you overcorrect. You buy gifts. You send paragraphs. You apologize for things you did not do. You start managing her emotions as if they were your job. You start walking on eggshells. You think you are being a good man. What you are doing is advertising that her moods control you. You're teaching her that she can move you by changing her tone. You are handing over dominance. Dominance is not abuse. Dominance is control of oneself, control of the frame, control of attention, control of access. A woman may say she wants a sensitive man. What she responds to is a centered man, a man who does not overreact, a man who does not plead, a man who does not explain himself into a hole, a man who does not beg to be trusted, a man who is consistent but not available on demand. Consistency without boundaries is servitude. Consistency with boundaries is authority. Machiavelli would not tell you to be cruel. He would ask you to stop being governed by the desire to be loved. Because the desire to be loved makes you controllable. It makes you compromise your standards. It makes you tolerate disrespect. It makes you negotiate with people who should be auditioning. So the reversal is to become the evaluator. You stop being evaluated. You stop living like you are on trial. You stop acting like every mood swing is a verdict on your worth. You watch. You measure. You decide. When she tests you, you do not rush. You do not perform. You do not collapse into reassurance. You allow space. You allow silence. You will enable her to feel the absence of your attention, not as punishment, as reality. Because your attention is the currency and you have been spending it like a desperate man. Now shift to family. Family is where guilt has the deepest roots. They know your buttons because they installed them. They know which tone makes you feel like a bad son. They know which words make you feel like a selfish brother. They know how to trigger the old identity you had before you had any power. After all we did for you. You never have time. You have changed. You think you are better than us. These phrases are not just emotions. They are strategies. They are attempts to pull you back into the role where you are controllable. If you argue, you accept the frame. If you explain, you accept the frame. If you try to prove you are still good, you accept the frame. The decisive move is to be calm and final. You do not debate your boundaries with people who benefit from you having none. You do not confess your life plan to people who will use it to judge you. You do not hand over details that could later become ammunition. You keep your life private. You keep your moves quiet. You show up on your terms. Machiavelli's realism applies here too. People close to you can still compete with you. They can still envy you. They can still resent your independence. They can still prefer the old version of you because it was easier to control. Your good intentions will make you return to the cage if you let them. Now, another reversal that the obedient man hates. Sometimes you must let people misunderstand you. You must let them think you are cold. You must let them think you are selfish. You must let them tell stories about you. Because every time you rush to correct the story, you prove it matters. You prove they can move you with perception. You prove you are managed by reputation. You cannot be powerful and overly concerned with being liked. You cannot hold authority while begging for fairness. You cannot maintain dominance while constantly seeking approval. This is where silence becomes a strategy again. Silence denies them information. Silence denies them access. Silence denies them the satisfaction of seeing you react. Silence is dominance when it is chosen. Imagine a friend group where someone tries to bait you. They throw a subtle insult. They wait for you to defend yourself. If you defend, you validate their authority to judge. If you laugh nervously, you validate the insult. If you attack emotionally, you look unstable. But if you pause and hold a neutral expression, you force them to carry their own words. You force the group to notice the tension. You remove the easy outcome. You take control of the pace. Pace is power. People who control the pace control the room. People who force you to rush control you. People who force you to explain control you. People who force you to justify control you. Machiavelli would say you do not win by being pure. You win by being effective. You win by controlling perception, access, alliances, and your own impulses. Impulses are where your good intentions get you trapped. The impulse to fix, the impulse to soothe, the impulse to apologize, the impulse to apologize, the impulse to clarify, the impulse to prove you meant well. You meant well. Nobody cares. They care what you allow. Now look at another power shift, the difference between being nice and being respected. Nice is a strategy of avoiding conflict. Respect is a consequence of being willing to enforce. Nice men are busy. Respected men are selective. Nice men are on call. Respected men are scheduled. Nice men are grateful for attention. Respected men are cautious with attention. Nice men explain. Respected men decide. When you are nice, you signal that you are willing to absorb discomfort to maintain social peace. That makes you safe. Safe is not powerful. Safe is usable. When you are respected, you signal that crossing you costs something. That creates caution. Caution creates respect. This is the moral inversion that your old training rejects. You were told that being feared is bad. You imagined fear as violence. You imagine fear as cruelty. That is not the fear Machiavelli is pointing at. It is the fear of consequence, the fear of losing access, the fear of being excluded, the fear of being denied, the fear that you are not controllable. That fear stabilizes respect. Now take it into the attention economy. People today do not just compete for money, they compete for attention. Attention is status. Attention is validation. Attention is an influence. If you give attention freely, you become cheap. If you give attention selectively, you become valuable. This is why you are ignored sometimes. You are always available. Your responses are instant. Your presence is predictable. Your approval is easy. Your energy is open. People respect what they have to earn, so you stop being easy. You stop being the man who answers every message with urgency. You stop being the man who always says yes. You stop being the man who always shows up. You stop being the man who always explains himself. You start being the man who chooses. Choosing is dominance. This does not mean being rude. It means being unavailable to manipulation. It means being unavailable to guilt. It means being unavailable to shame. It means being unavailable to emotional blackmail. Now, here is where the game becomes obvious. People will try to reframe your boundaries as a flaw. They will say you are distant. They will say you are different. They will say you are hard to read. They will say you are cold. These are not always criticisms. They are reconnaissance. They are trying to locate the old version of you. They are trying to find the soft spot. They are trying to see if you will rush to reassure them that you are still the same lovely man who can be controlled. Do not be reassured. You let the silence work. You let the ambiguity work. You let them adjust to your new frame. Because if you negotiate your boundaries to make other people comfortable, you are still under their authority. Machiavelli's brutal truth is that people follow the man who seems not to need them. That is why leaders can be distant. That is why authority often feels cold. Authority is not begging. Authority is not pleading. Authority is not explaining every choice to the crowd. Authority is a stance. Now I will give you another real-life reversal. The moment you feel the urge to clear things up, you are usually being controlled. You feel tension, you feel a shift, you think someone's disapproval, and you feel the itch. That itch is your training. The itch says, fix it, make it right, restore harmony, be good. That itch is the leash. If you clear things up, you are saying the other person's mood has jurisdiction over you. You are saying you are responsible for their internal state. You are saying you will work to regain their approval. That is submission. The power move is to let tension exist without rushing to solve it. Let them sit in their own mood. Let them explain if they want. Let them make a direct statement if they have one. Let them risk being clear. Most manipulators avoid clarity because clarity creates accountability. They prefer implication. They prefer the vibe. They prefer hints. They prefer silence that pressures you. So you reverse it. You refuse to interpret hints. You refuse to chase. You refuse to perform. You hold your frame. And when you hold your frame, the weak either adapt or leave. That is good. That is selection. Now I am going to say something that will offend the good-intentioned version of you. People do not respect your sacrifices. They consume them. Your sacrifices make you feel moral. They make you feel noble. They make you feel like a good man. But to other people, your sacrifices often look like you had no better option. They look like you are willing to be used. They look like you are hungry for approval. They look like you are trying to buy love. Love cannot be bought. Respect cannot be purchased with self-abandonment. Machiavelli would tell you to stop building your identity on martyrdom. Martyrs are celebrated after they are dead. While they are alive, they are exploited. If you want a clean reality check, look at who calls you when they need something. Look at who disappears when you need something. Look at who respects your time. Look at who assumes your time is theirs. That pattern is your position, and your position is not decided by your intentions. Your standards decide it. Now you might be thinking, so I should be selfish. That is the old moral trap. That is the binary thinking they trained you to think. Either you are reasonable and controllable, or you are bad and free. That is a child's framework, a controlled framework. The truth is, you can be calm and ruthless with boundaries while still acting with precision. You can help when it benefits your frame. You can give when it buys leverage. You can support when it strengthens alliances. You can be generous without being accessible. That is the strategy. That is power. Machiavelli's world is not about cruelty. It is about reality. It is about seeing how people actually move when stakes exist. It is about refusing to be blinded by ideal stories. Now integrate these shifts into a single stance. You stop trading your authority for approval. You stop explaining to people who are not entitled to explanations. You stop reacting to bait. You stop rescuing chaos. You stop being always available. You stop confessing to feel pure. You start controlling your attention. You begin controlling your silence. You begin controlling your distance. You start managing your access. That is dominance. And here is what happens next. And you need to hear it without flinching. When you stop being easy to control, some people will not like you. They will say you changed. They will tell you that you have become cold. They will say to you, you are no longer Foon. They will call you selfish. They will call you arrogant. They are not reporting your character. They are reporting their loss of access. Because when good intentions drove you, they could manage you. They could assign you roles. They could make you responsible for their comfort. They could rely on your guilt. They could feed on your need for approval. When you stop, they feel the power shift. They think the frame shift. They believe in the dominance shift. Your absence becomes louder than your presence used to be. Silence creates fear. Distance creates authority. Scarcity creates value. And if you do not accept this, you will become socially invisible in the worst way. Not unseen because you are mysterious, unseen because you are predictable, unseen because you are safe, unseen because you are the helper, the reliable one, the one who will always be there. That kind of invisibility is not peace, it is erased. You get invited when labor is needed, not when respect is present. You get contacted when problems arise, not when opportunities arise. You get tolerated, not valued. You become managed instead of respected. You think you are part of the group, but you are a function. You are a service. You are a utility. And utility is replaceable. That is the consequence of good intentions without a strategy. Now contrast that with what happens when you operate like a strategist, when you do not rush to answer, when you do not rush to fix, when you do not rush to explain, when you do not rush to prove, when you do not chase approval. People start watching you. They start measuring you. They start wondering what you are thinking. They start fearing loss because you are no longer guaranteed. Fear of loss is not evil. It is a valuation. When someone knows you can walk away, they treat you differently. When someone knows you can say no without guilt, they negotiate. When someone knows your time is protected, they respect it. When someone knows your attention is scarce, they earn it. This is not a game. This is not cruelty. This is realism. Machiavelli is not giving you an excuse to become chaotic. He is permitting you to stop being naive. He is giving you the authority to act like the world is what it is, not what you wish it were. Because wishing does not change outcomes, leverage changes outcomes. And leverage is built by boundaries, not intentions. You need to see how often other people's priorities are arranging your life, not because they are evil, because you allow it, because you feel guilty saying no, because you fear being disliked, because you fear conflict, because you fear being seen as selfish. That fear is the collar. The moment you remove the collar, your posture changes, your voice changes, your eyes change, your decisions change. You stop asking for permission to be a man. Now here is the real-world challenge. For the next 7 days, you do one thing with absolute control. You do not explain yourself when you say no. You do not justify. You do not overtalk. You do not send paragraphs. You do not do the nervous politeness routine. You say no, calmly, once, or you say I cannot, calmly, once, or you say nothing and you let the silence stand. Then you watch what happens. You watch who respects you. You watch who pressures you. You watch who tries shame. You watch who tries to guilt. You watch who tries to frame you as wrong for having a boundary. That is data. That is reality. And you do not argue with reality. You adjust. If you want more of this, you already know what to do. Like the video. Share it with the man who keeps getting managed. Subscribe to get the next layer of the game. If this hit you, write "I am the strategist" once in the comments to mark the day your mindset changed. Now close this video and move like a strategist. Not a helper, not an applicant, not a man asking to be understood. A strategist.